Hello, everybody. It's Mr. Odom, and I'm going to cover section 10.2, which is on probability. Make sure you have all your goodies, your pencil, composition book or notebook paper, and your calculator. The learning target for this video is I can understand the concept of probability and likelihood, and I can find the probabilities of events. So this is kind of the big deal for this whole chapter, probability. All right, so first thing we need is a definition. So the probability of an event is a number. So the probability of an event is a number. Okay, that number is between 0 and 1. And it is a number that measures the likelihood that the event will occur. Okay, and we'll look at some examples. This table is real important. And I am going to stop the video in a moment so that you can write this table down. There are some problems that ask you to find the likelihood. And when we are looking for the likelihood, the answers we're looking for, if I ask you, what's the likelihood that, we have a moon that circles the Earth? You're probably pretty certain. That's probably 100%. So you would say certain. Okay, so when we want to answer questions that ask us for likelihood, we want to use these words. All right. So other things about probability. Probabilities, are between 0 and 1. I said that. And you can include 0 and 1. But probabilities are not negative, and they are not greater than 1. So if you calculate the probability of something, you get a negative number. That's incorrect. If you calculate the probability of something and you get a number greater than 1, that is also incorrect. Okay, so this diagram below says it relates likelihoods, the above diagram, that's what the words are, and the probabilities, which are the numbers here below. Okay, these are probabilities. So if I have a probability that's 25%, then I would say that it is unlikely that that event will occur. If I have a probability that is 72%, well, 72% is close to 75%. So then I would say that that event is likely. So I'm going to pause the video right now, and I want you to write down the definition of probability, which is highlighted in green. And then I want you to copy down this number line or this line and the words above it and the numbers below it. So the video will pause now. All right, so we're back. A handy tip for probabilities is that you can write them. They're written as fractions, decimals, or percents. All right, so make sure you read the problems carefully. Sometimes they might ask you to write the probability as a percent, or sometimes they might ask you to write the probability as a fraction. And remember, if we are going to write an answer as a fraction, what do we have to make sure that our fraction is? It should be always, I've made a point of this so far this year a lot, so it should be, that's right, it should be simplified or in simplest form. So let's look at a couple problems. So the directions say describe the likelihood of the event given its probability. So the probability that you land a jump on a snowboard is 1/2. So what do I do with that 1/2? I look for that up here on this table. Okay. So the answer to the first one, the likelihood would be equally likely to happen or not to happen. That's the likelihood that you land a jump on a snowboard. So this is the answer to problem 1. For problem 2, there is a 100% chance that the temperature will be less than 120 degrees Fahrenheit tomorrow, unless you live in Death Valley or someplace super hot. Okay, but up here in Lake Stevens, the there is a 100% chance that the temperature will be less than 120 degrees Fahrenheit tomorrow. So 100%, I look for that up here. I see it right here. So the answer to problem number 2 is certain. Okay, that is the likelihood. You are certain that the temperature is not going to be greater, or will be less than 120 degrees Fahrenheit tomorrow. All right, let's look at another key idea. This key idea is how do we calculate probabilities? All right, so it says when all possible outcomes are equally likely, all right, equally likely to happen. The probability of an event, it's a ratio, okay, of the number of favorable outcomes. And remember, for favorable outcomes, we called that the foe, okay? The ratio of the number of favorable outcomes to the number of possible outcomes, which we called the PO, all right? So the probability of an event is written this way, probability of an event. The probability, whatever the event is, rolling a dice, landing your snowboard jump, okay, the probability that you're going to eat tacos or have a bag of Cheetos for lunch, okay, you can find these probabilities you can find, okay. The number of favorable outcomes, so the way I write this, so that way you don't have to write this whole formula out, is I write the probability of an event equals the foe over the PO. Okay? And remember, this is a fraction that we always have to write in simplest form. Okay? So let's look at some examples. So you roll a number cube, which is also called a 6-sided dice. What is the probability of rolling an odd number? Okay? So what I wrote down here are the possible outcomes, or the PO. I wrote them all out. Do you have to write them all out? No, but I found that that was pretty helpful for me. And then what do I need to do? I need to find the probability of rolling an odd number. So my favorable outcomes I highlighted in yellow. I could roll a 1, a 3, or a 5. That gives me 3 favorable outcomes, which I put in the numerator. Then in the denominator, I have the PO, the number of possible outcomes. And then I have to simplify that. I don't know why this is getting weird like that, but that's 1/2. So I could write it as a fraction, I can write it as a percent, or I can write it as a decimal. Okay, they're all 3 good answers. All right, let's look at another example. So this problem says the probability that you randomly draw a short straw, okay, from a group of 40 straws. All right, a group of 40 straws. Those are all my possible outcomes. There's 40 straws there. And my favorable outcome is, in this problem, is the short straws. How many short straws are in there? That's what we have to figure out. So we are given the probability. The probability of drawing a short straw is 3/20. Remember, this is in simplest form, okay? We want to know how many short straws there are. So what I do is I set up a proportion. On one side of my proportion, I have my probability. On the other side, I set up this ratio, which is my favorable outcomes over my possible outcomes. Remember, there are 40 straws, so those are my possible outcomes. I'm looking for the number of short straws, so those are my favorable outcomes. So I have this proportion. Then this one I can solve pretty much in my head, or you can use the multiplication property of equality, or you can use the cross products property. Okay, so The probability that this would take place is 3 over 20. And with that, I can determine that there are 6 short straws out of the 40 total number of straws. Okay, so that's how I get the answer of 6 straws. All right, let's move on. There's some examples I want you guys to practice. So for these 3 problems, I'm going to stop the video here, and I want you to work these out in your composition book. So the first one, you need to find the probability of rolling a number greater than 2. So think about what are your favorable outcomes and the possible outcomes. Same thing when you're rolling the dice, what's the probability of rolling a 7? What are your favorable outcomes and what are your possible outcomes? And then for number 5, this is just like this problem. So I'll leave this here. Well, actually, I won't leave it here. I will just say the probability that you randomly draw a short straw from a group of 75. So where that was 40 before, now it's 75. And here's the probability of that happening. So you want to set up a proportion to figure out the number of short straws. Okay, so I will stop the video here, see if I can kind of put that in there so you can see that last example to help you with number 5. So the video is going to stop now. All right, so we're back and let's see what we got for answers. So I have the answers down here. So for number 3, the probability of rolling a number greater than 2, here are my possible outcomes, my PO. And all the values greater than 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, how many favorable outcomes are there? There are 4 of them. So I put that in the numerator. And then I just simplify the fraction, and that's a perfectly good answer. If you want to write it as a percent, you could write it like that. Sometimes it'll ask you to round your answer. For number 4, the probability of rolling a 7. Well, there's no 7 listed here in my possible outcome. So my favorable outcome, there is no 7. So there are 0 favorable outcomes. There's 0 7s. You cannot roll a 7 on a 6-sided dice. So the probability of that happening is 0, okay, or 0%. And then for the last one, the probability of drawing a short straw, remember the number of possible outcomes is the number of straws that you have. And so I set up a proportion. I know what the probability is, and this is my FO over my PO. All right, and again, in my mind, I know 15 times 5 is 75, so I multiply the numerator by 5, and I get my answer that there are 5 straws. Okay, so hopefully you got those right. If you didn't, now you can see the solutions and the work that you need to do to answer these questions. So that's it for this video. Hopefully that was helpful for you. This is Mr. Odom, and I am OUT.